Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. Hey guys, just me on the podcast today. I wanted to come on and share my postpartum doctor's appointments, my experience with those appointments. So if you have listened to previous episodes of the podcast, you may have picked up the fact that I just recently had a baby about 5 weeks ago as of the recording of this episode. And so I just had my, quote, postpartum appointment, postpartum checkup appointment, where basically the doctor makes sure that you're all healed up. But often this appointment lands us with the doctor sitting right across from us in the exam room saying, okay, what type of birth control do you want? And also, holds up the picture of an IUD and tries to convince you to get one of those. So I wanted to share with you my two experiences, because this was my second child that I've had, and how they were different, and really what I want you as a listener and you as a Catholic who uses NFP, or if you're not Catholic, just as a person who uses fertility awareness, what I want you to look for in a doctor-patient relationship if you're not able to find a Catholic doctor or a really fertility awareness friendly or NFP friendly doctor in your area. For me, in my area, that's not something that is all that accessible to me, is finding an NFP friendly OBGYN or a Catholic doctor. There are other areas. I know a lot of you have spoken to me about your Catholic doctors that you have and the various experiences you have there. And that's not to say that every Catholic doctor is absolutely perfect. But the point of this episode is to I want to talk about what you should be looking for in a doctor-patient relationship if you're not able to have just that perfect doctor-patient relationship where your doctor is looking at your charts and excited for you using NFP. By the way, my 5-week-old son is sitting on my lap for this episode recording, so you might hear some little baby noises in the background. All right, so first, I want to go back about 2 years to my first postpartum doctor's appointment experience. So I went into the doctor's appointment not even thinking about the birth control question. I didn't think it would even come up. So I was not prepared at all for when the doctor asked me, okay, what type of birth control do you want? And I kind of looked at her and I kind of stammered and said, oh, well, we use NFP. And that doctor looked at me with just this face of, I don't know, almost disgust. And she just said, okay, so you use the calendar rhythm method? And I looked at her, I said, no, it's a lot more updated than that. It's based on mucus and basal body temperature and specific rules. And then she just kind of snapped at me and said, well, we don't encourage you to get pregnant in the first 6 months postpartum. And I thought to myself, yeah, neither do I. I think that would be a lot for my body to go through. In my mind, I'm thinking, I'm planning on waiting quite a while before getting pregnant again. That was a lot. But then, of course, out loud, I just sort of looked at her and said, yeah, well, it works. And it was very awkward. And she just kind of brushed off the rest of the appointment and we went on our way. And I left that appointment with a very sour taste in my mouth and realized that I could not continue care with that doctor because of the way that she had responded. She didn't listen to me and she just kind of talked down to me and really made me feel like she didn't care. So I found a new OBGYN and had different care with the second pregnancy. And so I want to tell you about my experience with this most recent appointment. So I just had this appointment a couple of days ago. And, we've talked quite a few times on the podcast, and I've given you a script to use in the doctor's office. And I've given you that script without personally ever using it. Sorry about that. I really should have used the script first and then given it to you. But spoiler alert, it's still a great script to use, actually. And so that script that I have suggested you use before is I use the blank method of fertility awareness to chart my cycle. Just that plain and simple sentence. And I came up with that because, I think a lot of times there's just so much confusion around what NFP means, what fertility awareness means, how much should you share with your doctor? Is NFP the Catholic term and fertility awareness the non-Catholic term? What do all these things mean? And what I came to is that when you're speaking with a doctor, particularly one who is not, NFP fertility awareness friendly or one that's not Catholic, you need to be very direct. You need to be confident in what you use. And you probably need to not use the term NFP because the term NFP has a very negative connotation in the medical community. And so I encourage you to use the term fertility awareness or fertility awareness-based method because that's a little bit more known in the medical community. I mean, I say a little bit more known. And it doesn't quite have the same negative connotation that NFP does upon immediately hearing it. So, sorry, that was a bit of a caveat before my appointment experience. Okay, so I knew exactly what to expect in this appointment. I had just had one of these 2 years ago. I knew exactly what they were going to ask me. And so driving to the appointment, I was legitimately nervous. I was nervous about how my doctor was going to respond to this. I had had such a negative experience before of just kind of getting talked down to and feeling, I don't know, almost guilty, or just feeling like I was dumb for using NFP, which was sort of how my previous doctor had made me feel. And so I was very nervous to talk to this doctor. I've heard from many of you guys much worse experiences than the one that I had had. And so I didn't actually know how this doctor was going to handle this. But I knew that chickening out was not an option. I have to, I'm the one who hosts a podcast about this on a regular basis. So I need to be the one that actually does advocate for myself in the doctor's office for this kind of a thing. But I just want to let you know, if you're ever feeling nervous about talking to your doctor about fertility awareness or NFP, just know it's completely normal. And all of us feel that way. So I go into the appointment. I'm handed a little questionnaire to fill out about some basic postpartum things. And of course, on that questionnaire is, what type of birth control would you like? And so I wrote none. I kind of considered writing fertility awareness, but fertility awareness and NFP are not birth control. They are not. And so technically, no birth control. So I wrote none. And then I get face-to-face with the doctor. We go through the other basic stuff in the postpartum appointment, checking if everything healed correctly and that kind of thing. And so she looks at that question and she says, okay, so does your husband use condoms, or, what do you do? And so I said, I use the symptothermal method of fertility awareness to track my cycle. And she paused for a sec, and her response actually was really an exciting response for me. And I'll explain why. So her response was, But doesn't that not work until you get periods? And I then responded to her, well, it's a little bit different postpartum. It's based on mucus only and those traits, and there's a little bit different rules. And she kind of looked at me and then said, okay, so if you and your husband had an oops baby, it wouldn't be a big deal. And I said, no, definitely not. Because of course it would not be. Ideally, I wouldn't have an unplanned pregnancy, but of course we would welcome any child that God wants to give us. But let me explain why her response to me was so exciting. That response showed me that she knows something, even just a tiny, tiny bit, about fertility awareness. Maybe she knows something about the symptothermal method. Obviously, I didn't get into it with her. We unfortunately didn't have that kind of time. The, American medical system, you get about 10 minutes with your doctor. But it showed me that she did know something. And that was really, really exciting to me because then I got the opportunity to explain to her, it was 5 seconds that I told her what the symptothermal method looks like actually in postpartum. Because yes, technically, the symptothermal method doesn't actually work unless you are cycling because it requires the basal body temperature rise for the symptothermal rule. And you're not going to get that until you start cycling. So if you're using a symptothermal method postpartum in that cycle 0, you're actually basically using a mucus-only method. You might be still tracking your temperature to try to catch that first temperature rise, but you are basing your fertile and infertile windows on a basic mucus rule, is what the method that I use and teach calls it. So anyway, I was very excited about the fact that my doctor did know even just a tiny, tiny bit, and that I got the opportunity to give her just a nugget more information. And maybe the next time that I talk with this same doctor about birth control, or it comes up again, I can give her just a little bit more. But the most exciting part about it is that she respected my choice. Maybe she doesn't agree with it. Maybe she thinks that I'm probably going to have an unplanned pregnancy. Maybe she thinks that it would be a better choice for me to use some form of birth control or get an IUD. But she didn't push it at all. She heard me out. She asked me a quick question. She made sure that I was comfortable with that choice. That's really what her question about the oops baby was, is that she just wanted to make sure that I was in fact comfortable using fertility awareness. Now, of course, those of us listening to this podcast, we know that in a basic sense, fertility awareness is a lot more effective than any other method of birth control, simply because we actually know what our body is doing. But I, of course, didn't have time to get into that with my doctor. But that's what I want you to find in a doctor-patient relationship, is respect. Your doctor doesn't need to agree with your choice, but they need to respect your choice and allow that to be your choice. Your doctor should never make you feel guilty for using NFP or fertility awareness. Your doctor should never talk down to you about that or demean your choice in any way. And if you find that your doctor is making you feel that way, then I would highly encourage you to find a new doctor if that's possible for you. Because that respect is absolutely necessary in a doctor-patient relationship. Because if your doctor doesn't respect you and your choices, then what's going to happen is later down the line, when there is another choice that you want to make, then your doctor may be more pushy toward what they want. And you know your body best. Of course, you should always listen to your doctor, especially in the case of something that requires intervention. But on the other side of that, as those of us who use fertility awareness-based methods for NFP, we know that our doctors may not always have the best advice or the best knowledge, especially when it comes to birth control specifically. But that respect is so important, so necessary in that relationship. And so I really encourage you to do what I did, which was find a new doctor, because that experience, while of course I could nitpick it down and realize that like it still wasn't that great of an experience. And obviously my ideal doctor-patient relationship with my OB would be to be able to show her my charts and that doctor to be able to help me with my fertility. Obviously that would be ideal, but that's not the situation that I have where I live right now. And so I just encourage you to find that respect, and be confident in what you know as a user of fertility awareness and NFP, because you know way more about your body than anyone else in that doctor's office who isn't using fertility awareness. You know so much more because of the fact that you use fertility awareness to practice NFP. And I want you to know that. I want you to be confident in that, and to just be able to take that with you whenever you are in situations where you have to talk about the fact that you use NFP. And you know, most of us, that situation is going to be the doctor's office at some point. But take that knowledge with you, that you know so much more about your body than anyone else in that office. And that should give you confidence. And that should make you feel really good about yourself, because it's really important to know what's going on in our bodies. And we have a leg up in that we are tracking our cycles. And so we know a lot of what's going on in our bodies. Well, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for listening to my experience. If any of you guys have had a totally, completely different doctor's appointment experience, I would love to hear it. I'd love to do an episode sharing more people's doctor's office experiences. So if you'd like to share yours on an episode, or if you would want to just share yours via an email and then I could share it on the podcast, I would absolutely love that. So please feel free to reach out to me on Instagram at Charting Toward Intimacy, or reach out via email. I love hearing from you guys. Until next time.